this was about as bizarre and as easy as it gets.
So the number for me was a number that would allow me to never have to work again.
I feel like we got top.
I went from a sale of, $500,000 to in debt.
$192 million.
This is Built to Sell Radio with your host, John Warrillow.
So when's the last time you read a book on selling your company? My guess is you've never read a book on selling your company. Why bother when the only books out there read like textbooks, filled with acronyms and terms you've never heard of, written by people who make it their job to make themselves look and sound smarter than you? Why bother? Well, The Art of Selling Your Business tries to do exactly the opposite. It features the stories of the founders I've listened to for the podcast. I've taken their best practices, their secret hacks, and bundled them into a storytelling format so that you can take away the key lessons, the action plan, the field guide without sifting through the boring textbook that is most books on the topic of selling your company. You can get it at builttosell.com/selling. Before every episode of Built to Sell Radio, I chat with the guests. I give them an overview of the show, and I'm like, we try to point out some of the tips and tricks of how to sell a company, some of the gotchas in the negotiation. And invariably the response is, man, I wish I'd known about this show before I sold my last company. Because look, we don't get a chance to sell our business every day. For most of us, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. And yet we can make unforced errors along the way that can cost us hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars if we get it wrong. And my next guest, Cary Moretti, is admittedly a little bit of a technology nerd. He wasn't really savvy about selling a company, the value of his company, yet he went through the sale and learned a lot of tips and tricks along the way. Here to tell you the entire story and the things he might do differently had it to do all over again is Cary Moretti. Cary Moretti, welcome to Built to Sell Radio.
John, thank you for welcoming me. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about NewSportMedia. What did you guys do?
NewSportMedia was a company that focused on real-time stats and scoring, primarily for hockey, but we also did all the sort of ancillary services that came with that. So launching websites for teams, leagues, et cetera.
Okay, so you would sell. So if I'm a huge fan of some team and they're not on TV or I can't get to the game or whatever, I could pull up the stats and find out that my favorite player just took a shot on goal because you're tracking it in real time. Am I getting it?
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Okay. A lot of really, really over energized type A parents try to see their kids and how many goals they've got and how many penalty minutes they've got. Is that part of the
John,
universe?
Not just parents. I swear to God, I got calls from uncles and aunts. Like,
really?
And their ability to track down my personal information was mind-boggling. Like I took on my personal cell phone, not even my work number.
Yeah,
I remember
little Timmy had 6 shots on goal, not 5 shots on goal. What are you doing?
Can you please change his stats because he's being scouted and this is big money for these kids and their families. So yeah.
Oh, for sure. Sure. Did you bend any pressure? Did you ever change anybody's stats?
Never. No, that was a hard stop for me. Yeah.
Okay. So how did you get the stats? Like, did you have rovers all around like at these games or how did you actually get people like, that sounds expensive to have people monitoring these games.
Yeah, no, I didn't. Actually, the service was quite inexpensive. A mistake that after the sale they rectified very quickly. What we did was we worked with teams in the beginning, and then eventually we sort of went up to the next level, and we sold our services at the league level rather than just the team level. And they provided their own staff for scoring the game. So what we did was we provided the input tools, so the software that they would log into at on site, whether it's in an arena or at a field, a stadium, wherever it was, they would log into our, secure private portal, and we had all the tools available for scoring whatever game they were needing to score, and then that data comes into our servers.
Okay, so in the early days, if I'm a hockey team, someone on my staff would be responsible for updating Leaguestat in real time, and then
staff, volunteer.
Right. Parents, recruiters can be watching in real time Leaguestat as a user. Got it. What was the business model? How did you make money?
Software as a service, really simple.
Who
We
was the
literally sold it
customer?
as a service. The customer was like I said, in the beginning it was the teams, and then it later on it became the leagues.
And what would a league pay you on a monthly basis to have access to Leaguestat for their teams?
Oh, that's a good question. It's been a few years now. So it can really vary. So for example, I'm in Canada, hence the hockey angle there.
Yeah.
And we did work with, for example, the Canadian Hockey League. The Canadian Hockey League, when we started working with them, had roughly 60 teams. But we also did work with leagues that had 12 teams. We did work with a league in the UK that had, I think, 7 teams. So, and then also you have, the American Hockey League was probably our best client. To this day, I still have good personal relationships with that league. And, that league only had, at the time, we started with 28. They grew up to about 30 teams. So half as many as the Canadian Hockey League, but they had over 1 million visitors a month. So the rates really varied by client, and they would be based on the things you would typically do for software as a service, and that is number of users, number of teams, amount of data we'd have to store, number of touch points for scoring, and of course, web traffic. So we'd kind of weigh all these, and then for every league, it would be sort of a one-off pricing. We didn't have an a la carte model where they could just say, oh, I'll take this for $11 a month or anything like that. We really were quite niche in that way.
SaaS is a beautiful business model, but it's expensive to get started because you're not getting all the money up front. You're getting it over time. How did you finance the business?
By going broke. I'm bootstrapped. So I think that your listeners will resonate with my awful, sad story. But, I came I'm going to be open with you here, John. I came close to bankruptcy twice in my journey towards the eventual sale. It was really tough. I essentially, it was a passion play. I didn't do this because I had a brilliant idea. I didn't have some, I don't have an MBA. I didn't just strategically do the Jeff Bezos thing where I said, there's a market opportunity here in hockey in Canada. No, you know what? I had a little software business. I built custom applications for clients. And this was in the late 90s, right? Just around the dot-com boom, and everyone was jumping on the internet, and I was getting interest here and there. And it wasn't so much that I saw an opportunity as I had a couple of clients that actually ran hockey teams. One of them was I can say this, at the time they were in Brampton, they're no longer there, Brampton Battalion, and I was also doing some work for St. Michael's Hockey down in Toronto. So These are like just 2 little clients. I think I was charging $50 a month for a website, and monitoring, right? And I was chatting with the president of one of the teams. And I said to him, why don't you guys, do real-time data? Like, why don't we update your website so, the fans and everyone can watch from home? And he's like, what, how does it, at that time, you got to remember, late 90s, he didn't really get how the internet worked. He had not actually been on any websites at the time, right? This is like pretty early days. So I sketched out this idea for him, and he's like, that sounds really good. He says, we're really struggling because we have a radio contract, but we can't get the broad. Can you do the audio broadcasting too? Can you stream radio? I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, let me look into it. So with this one little team, we set up a real-time scoring system. We had live stats. On top of the scoring, I also had stats for the players. And then I started doing audio streaming. I don't remember even what software I was using, like Real Player or something like that. We did the whole thing just for this team. I did it for nothing. Like nothing. I charged them a little bit to do it, but I was doing this nights and weekends. I mean, that's when they play, right? So during the day, 9 to 5, there I am building websites. I got a few staff, very modest business, no big deal. And at night, I'm driving out to Brampton, watching hockey games. I'm sitting with their broadcaster. I built them a recording studio. Like I went to Long and McQuaid. I remember I bought a mixing panel. I bought mics. I had cabling. This is like Scotch tape and baling wire. It was hilarious. And I loved it. So when you say how do you fund it? I didn't. I just did it all for nothing.
Okay. So how does it go from the Brampton Battalion to a SaaS company? What was tell me about that journey.
I can't, I'm not going to give you all the steps in the middle because it's kind of boring. But really, it essentially worked like this. One team became 2, became 3, became 5, became 10. And at one point, I was getting very close to sort of what I would call critical mass, right? So within a given league, if you have enough teams that are clients for a given service, you have a door opener there where you can approach the league itself. And that's literally, it was organic. So that's exactly what happened. So I got one team, and of course, word gets out pretty fast when you're doing things like live audio broadcast in an era when no one else was doing it, live stats, et cetera. Other teams call and say, hey, I was talking to Joe over at the Brampton Battalion. He said you did this. Can you do that for us? And so, I made lots of mistakes. It was disaster. I gave everyone the same price, right? This like 30, 50 bucks a month for all this stuff. And it wasn't until I was doing 5, 6 teams, I realized, man, I am losing my shirt. I'm driving around places on weekends. I'm helping people set up audio mixing. Yeah, it was stupid. So I did that for a couple of years, and I finally started saying, okay, I got to charge you guys something. And so kind of individually negotiated with each team a more rational rate. I dropped all the audio stuff because that was really expensive. And there was another IT company at the time that was doing that sort of thing. So I'm like, yeah, go get that done somewhere else or get a radio station to do it for you. And then the league approached me. Like I got approached by the league and they said, can you do this for all of our teams? Like we want to sign one contract for everybody. And that got the ball rolling. That while I was by the way, that took over a year to get done because you don't sign these contracts overnight.
And this was the Canadian Hockey League or the GTHL?
It actually wasn't. It was the Ontario Hockey League.
Ontario Hockey League.
Yeah.
So as you built out the business and started going to other hockey leagues, did you stay with the same sort of grassroots model where you pick up individual teams and then get critical mass and then go to the administration of the entire league? Or after you kind of figured it out, so to speak, did you start going directly to the league itself?
Yeah, the latter. I really thought my business model, and it took a very good personal friend of mine, by the way, to point this out to me. I thought my business model was brilliant. I was just going to keep getting teams until I have thousands of them, and I'm going to charge them all $30 or $50 a month. I'm going to get so rich. And he's like, dude, you're losing so much money. Like he's an accountant. He's a CPA. And he sat down and he looked at my books. He did this business analysis. He says, you are going to be fully bankrupt any day now. You can't sustain this. The more customers you get, the more money you're going to lose. And I'm like, what? And he sort of pointed out, he said, you do have a decent model here at the league level, right? He said, and so once he kind of pointed out, it became pretty obvious. And I'm like, yeah.
So
okay.
What was he pointing out? So at an individual team level, you weren't charging enough to.
I just wasn't. Yeah. You just can't at the time anyways. Again, the financial model, we're fast forwarding now 15 years here, right? When I started, the financial model just couldn't bear it. Like there wasn't enough online advertising revenue out there. Teams really weren't focused on the internet. They were like, and to a certain extent, they still aren't. Their gate is their money. Like, they don't sell tickets. I don't know how, to be honest, they're all surviving this pandemic. But without that, they just don't have the revenue. So the web was really a bit of a cost center for them more than a revenue driver. Now, that model has massively changed in the last, I'd say, 10 years. But at the time, that was the issue.
Bring us up to present day. Like what's different now?
Well, I'd say, if you're a sports fan, you understand this, but I guess we're talking to non-sports fans as well. So now the internet is the model, right? So if you're not online, if your team or your sport doesn't have a phenomenal online presence, and I don't just mean real-time scoring, I mean full stats, interactivity, chat rooms with players. It's the access fans get to their favorite athletes is pretty amazing. If we think back, when I was a kid 1,000 years ago, if I wanted to meet a famous hockey player, I had to go down to a big stadium and stand in a line or
Maple Leaf Gardens with your hat in your hand and say, come Daryl Sittler, I want to see your autograph, whatever.
Right, sign my hockey card, or my baseball card. But now it's not like that. You can chat with players on Twitter anytime you want, right?
Yeah.
They've got Instagram accounts, TikTok,
Okay, so I want to get into what you did to pull yourself out of these near bankruptcy situations. So it sounds like the business model in the early days was to daisy chain your way to these teams and then get to the league. you switched it and went directly to the league. So that helped, number one.
Right.
Were there other things you did to change the financial model to get yourself out of, making it more advantageous from a financial perspective?
So I tried to come up with and I mentioned this before about the sort of the a la carte thing. So when I first switched from the team to the league model, the first thing I said was, okay, I need to set a rate, right? I need to publish this on my website. I have to have a price so that lots of leagues can see me and I can sign up hundreds or thousands of them around the world. That failed. I very quickly found that I couldn't set a fixed rate for these leagues. For one thing, the leagues I was dealing with at the time, I started with some fairly professional level leagues. I didn't start with, for example, minor hockey associations. You mentioned the GTHL, for example. I don't think I spoke to anyone at the GTHL until I was basically approaching the era when I was in this selling the application, like selling to an acquirer, right? So I started pretty much at the top. I spoke with the American Hockey League. They're the league that is the feeder to the NHL.
Sure.
They're sort of the affiliate of the NHL. The ECHL, again, similar to the AHL, they're affiliated with the NHL. The Canadian Hockey League. So a lot of people think that junior hockey in Canada is amateur. It's pretty much a pro sport. There's some cities where they'll watch the local junior hockey team, the major juniors, before they'll go to an NHL game. It's pretty hardcore here in Canada. So
yeah, keep going. No, I was going to say, so back to the changes you made. So you focused on the conferences, but then I'm curious to know, again, you kind of alluded to these near bankruptcy situations. Yeah. I got to believe there were other things you did to make the business model hum beyond just focusing on the conferences. You were getting into the conversation around pricing. Was there something you did around pricing?
Yeah. So the first thing was to come up with a sort of a rational formula, one that I couldn't broadcast because I couldn't just say it's, $10 per team per month or anything like that. I came up with sort of a flat rate per month that I started discussions with at the league level. And then what I did was I said, look, I can't do this. Like I don't have a VC backing me. I don't have any money. I literally have me, and I have a mortgage. That's it, right? So I can get a credit line. That was it. So when the leagues came in and, as they do with SaaS products, they're like, well, I love your product and we're happy to pay, but we really needed to do this or that. So the second piece of my financial tweak that solved all my problems was, okay, we have two parts then. We have our SaaS model and we have professional services. So you get what you get. The way it works is the way it works. We're not going to, customize. I mean, we will bend over backward from a customer service perspective, but our application is our application. It's very expensive to change. You want to change? No problem. That's where professional services come in. So I had two revenue streams. And honestly, some years my professional services were better than my SaaS revenues. I know that doesn't, from an acquirer perspective, that's a no-no. Everybody wants their MRR really, really high, but there was nothing I could do. I was bootstrapped. I was self-funded. The only way I could make it work was this. And you know what? It did. Like once I got those two things figured out, that I don't have to give everyone the same price because they're not getting the same output. And B, I can charge to upgrade my software if a client asks for it and they're willing to pay for it. So once I had those two things sorted, I never had another near bankruptcy again after that.
Awesome. With regards to the professional services, did you charge for those upfront? Did you bill them over time? Was it staged billing? Like, how did you charge? If I said, I love your product, but I want it to be in pink instead of black, you said, sure, that'll be an extra X. Was the X billed up front, over time, at the end? How did you bill the professional services?
Yeah, there were a couple different ways of doing it, but by and large, a lot like any small IT company would. So we had a small number of clients. We had dozens verging on hundreds. We didn't have thousands, right? So it was really easy. It sort of a little bit would depend on the request. If something was really big and I saw a few clients were asking for it, then I would say, hey, I'm sending this out. Anybody who wants it, it's a fixed rate. You're going to get it. Anyone who doesn't sign on and pay may or may not get it one day, but we're not going to be deploying it across our network. This is going to be, and we had ways of feature gating. So we were able to actually release certain features for certain clients so that we didn't get any of that sort of backbiting where, how come you gave it to them for nothing and I had to pay you? So that avoided all that. In terms of flat rate versus hourly, There was a little bit of an art to that, less than math or science. A little bit was, what I felt the customer would be, willing to pay. Would they be okay if I actually charged them my real time? And sometimes they weren't, and I really wanted the feature. So again, comes back to the passion thing, right?
Yeah.
At the time, I was a coder, so I'd just code at night in my spare time and eat the loss and have a better product as a result.
I get the fact that there was a differing prices and is a little bit of art than the science. I'm actually really curious about how you chose to invoice the customer for the custom work. So I appreciate that it varied a little bit depending on the request and who was asking. But once you had agreed that you were going to make that customization for, let's just put a number on it, $10,000. So that's what the customization was going to cost. Did you do the work, send the invoice at the end? Did you send the invoice at the beginning? Did you cut it up into payments? Like, how did you bill the 10 grand?
Oh, okay. Yeah. That simple question answer. So normally we would do the work. We would release the feature. We would have the customer validated that, yes, you have delivered what I wanted. And at the very end of that month, it would go on the invoice that had their next monthly SaaS. So we also billed the monthly SaaS fees monthly.
Got it. Yeah.
That sounded weird. But so January 1, they'd get an invoice for February's fees. So the next round of invoices, and again, we did this to save money on administration and accounting, we would just throw any professional services that were approved and deployed, we just throw them onto the next invoice, and they have net 30 to pay.
Got it. Okay. That's helpful. How many employees did you have at the company at its height before you decided to sell?
27.
27.
Maybe
and what were they all doing?
Oh God, I don't know. It was such a mess. So I should also say NewSportMedia did a lot more than just the real-time stats and scoring. The professional services kind of spun up and it turned into its own beast. Like, we started doing websites for sports teams and associations that had nothing to do with our core product. And at the time, I still had that small business mentality. So I was like, someone calls me and says, "Hey, can you do this?" The answer is, of course. If you're going to pay me, I'll do it. Whatever. We build websites. Back then, we didn't care what the hell kind of website we built. We just build it and charge. So it made a bit of a mess. It's actually what led to the sale in the end. Our company got so wide. Like I said, 27 staff. I'd say of those 27, less than half were actually part of Leaguestat. Quite a bit less than half. I'd say maybe 6, 7 of them. So what are all these other staff doing? We had some people doing project management, custom development, integration. We had retail web stores. We were building shops and websites. Yeah, wow. we were really scattered.
And so you were kind of alluding to this, what I wanted to get into next, which was actually the decision to sell Leaguestat. So you're at 27 employees, 7 of whom are working on this SaaS product called Leaguestat, but there's also a lot of other stuff going on. Was there a straw that broke the camel's back that made you say, okay, now I'm going to sell Leaguestat? Was there a triggering event of some sort?
No, there really wasn't. Leaguestat was kind of a funny thing. Like I said, it wasn't like I have no illusions to intelligence or business acumen. I don't have either of those. I'm just a guy. I'm actually just a nerd. I'm barely a guy. I love coding. I love writing software. Now I mostly manage programmers. But at the time, I kind of lucked into a lot of it. A lot of good timing, being around in the early days of the internet. Literally, when SaaS was just growing up. I didn't even know it was called SaaS at the time, to be honest. So when it came to the triggering event, it wasn't so much that there was an event as it was, I look back at it now and I'd say, it was clear that I was moving this way. I just didn't know it. So I had never been part of an acquisition or sale. I was very much an entrepreneur for sure. Love building new products and applications, but I never thought of myself, the way they did in the Valley. I didn't have that .com mentality or that startup culture thing. I was like my dad. My dad's a hairdresser.
So what happened? Did someone approach you, or did you like?
They did. Yeah, it started the very first year. Before I even had my first league launched, someone approached me to acquire the software, and it was a silly offer. So I was making more than what they had offered. So, and then what happened was, I'd get somebody would come along like every year. Someone would acquire, and they rarely ever talked numbers. Sometimes I couldn't even tell that they were making a play. for me. Like, I mean, I was that clueless, honest to God. Like I'd get these out of the blue inquiries from a VC literally saying, hey, we're interested in businesses and startups. Would you like to have a conversation? I'm like, I don't know who this guy is. Right. And not even follow up. But after a little while, you can only do this so many times and not eventually clue in, no matter how dumb I am. So I eventually figured out that, there's people interested in my software. And once I figured that out, then things changed pretty fast. I'd say from the moment that aha moment, like, hey, this is a thing that I can sell and people will give me money for, to the moment that I actually found an acquirer that was a good fit, I'd say that was about 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm not that fast.
No, I didn't mean to suggest that it was, I mean, I just, it's incredible. So what happened in those 4 years? So I assume you started to answer those inquiries slightly differently.
Yeah. So in total, by the way, it was almost 15 years from start to sale. So it was really just the first 9 or 10. I was not interested. I literally, why would I sell my income? It was the only way. It was how I paid my mortgage, raised my kids. I mean, it's how I earned a living, and I sure didn't want to get a job. After you do this long enough, you can't work for anybody. I'm totally unemployable. So so what happened was I kind of clued in at some point, maybe, I don't know, 2010, 2012. And then I started, I guess I just matured a little. And when the offers started coming in, I really started looking at them. So I started having more serious conversations, and I really didn't like what I saw, to be honest. Remember, this was not a planned thing that I did. I did it because I love sports and I love stats.
What didn't you like about the offers? Like, what was not appealing?
Honestly, it was never the money. It was never the money. Because in most cases, I didn't even get to the fiscal discussion. It was what they proposed to do with with the application. I thought of it as mine. I just didn't think it was a good fit. Most of them were companies that were trying to make sort of a strategic move or expanding into sports in general, and they just wanted to check a box. So yeah, now we have hockey, and I'm not going to name names. They're all out there. They're all still out there. All these companies are still there. It's a small space, IT for sports, very small space. So I just wasn't interested. And then one day, the eventual acquirer came along, and he didn't approach me directly, the owner of the company. It was someone who knew me through one of my clients that I had met at a hockey conference, and blah blah blah. And he said, hey, I'm doing some work with this great new company that I think we could do some work together. I thought it was that he wanted to buy not my software. I thought he just wanted to become a customer, to be honest. It was a strange email. I said, yeah, sure. And so we met, we had lunch and coffee, and it was a very weird lunch because I'm sitting there thinking, oh, this guy is working for a league. And then at some point I'm like, what are you saying to me? Like, we're 30 minutes into our chit chat. I'm like, I have no idea what you're asking. Like, are you looking to become a customer? He goes, no. I think we can, there's some synergies. And like, he's throwing out all these business terms, and I have no idea what he's talking about. Anyways,
let me just, I want to go further because I love this guy. Cary, was this, was this the president of the company that you were having lunch with, or was it the kind of not broker, but the middleman that you were?
He was actually neither. Actually, he was just an employee at the company, and I guess they had some kind of executive meeting. And the owner was like, "Okay, guys, we have some problems here. We need more software. I don't know, like some kind of. We're going to expand. Like I've got some money to spend. I want to acquire." I want to make good strategic acquisitions. I'm just guessing. I really never got around to asking how it happened.
But so this guy's an employee of this company, and he's talking about all these big words, synergy and optimization,
partnership, and work together.
Yeah, got it. And then so what? Like, how did it go from a bunch of double talk to like? At what point did you actually realize? Oh no, he actually wants to acquire us?
Yeah, he name dropped. He dropped a couple of names, and then I'm like, oh, these aren't customer names. These are something else. These are money people. So then I was like, I stopped and I said, okay, are we talking about an acquisition? He says, yes, we are. I said, okay, maybe I should talk to whoever, I'm like, okay, so we got to stop talking. I need to talk to the right person. And then.
And what did he say to that? Because that could be viewed by some people as a bit offensive, right? Like, what, you don't want to talk to me? Like, did he take offense to that?
I don't know, like, well, John, I haven't known each other very long. I think we're going on 30 minutes now. I'm a very blunt guy. Like, I'm not NewSportMedia had no sales staff, by the way, literally. When we were at 27 people, we had, I think, 3 project managers, 23 programmers, like literally hands-on keys, individuals who wrote code, and 1 office administrator, who, by the way, worked part-time. No sales, no strategy, no marketing. That's all. We were just code slingers, right? So I don't have a lot of the skills of being nice. So when I said this to him, I don't know, I may actually have pissed him off. I genuinely don't know, but we're still friends. So
where does it go from there? So you're like, I got to talk to the decision maker here. So what next?
Well, then it was, I'd have to check my calendar to say exactly what next, but basically it was a string of meetings. Immediately he put me in contact with, this was a private acquisition. So it was really, person to person. The two of us, it started with a meeting, actually, not even a phone call. Just said, and they invited me to their offices, sat down, chit-chatted, and I really loved what they had to say. You asked me before, what was the decision? And at that time, like I said, for about 4 years, I had already been thinking I should find a home for Leaguestat. It's kind of outgrown me. I'm not a great business individual. Like, I don't have these big visions or how to manage, or I certainly didn't at the time. I feel like I know a hell of a lot more now. But at the time, I knew that if I really wanted the software that I love, that I was passionate about, if I wanted it to become a world beater and grow even more, I either had to get a lot of money from someone, and I knew nothing at the time about VCs and investment. I know a lot more now. Or I had to find another company in the space that had pockets deep enough to take my software to the next level. And all those other acquisitions, they weren't either of those. They were either just looking to check a box, which meant to me my software was dead, or I frankly just didn't like the company. I didn't like their chance of success. So this meeting came around, or this series of meetings, and the more I learned, the more I liked. They were very niche. They were very focused. The new owner was.
Sorry, who is this company we're talking about?
Hockey Tech. Sorry, the company's called Hockey Tech.
Okay, and what is their business model? I don't know anything about them.
Well, they are literally what they were at the time is what they still are now. They are everything hockey. When it comes to technology, they provide it all. So video streaming services, scouting, data, stats, scoring, websites, soup to nuts, all the way from the pros, NHL, all the way down to rec hockey.
And selling to the leagues themselves, just like you?
Correct. Yeah, they had league clients at the time. They were working with, I believe, almost all the NHL teams as well. So I really, really was impressed with the organization.
Got it. And obviously very focused on what you were focused on and so forth. So at what point did the specter of valuation come up? I mean, like, did you have any sense of what you thought on a multiple of revenue you thought your company might be worth? Like, what was, before they made an offer, did you have any inkling of what it might be worth?
It's funny. I feel like such a dummy now that, I say to you, it was around, 3-4 years that I was thinking about it. In that 3-4 years, I never really settled on a number. I never really had like, here's how I'm going to do it. I just sort of got this idea that I knew I needed money. I was so focused on the software, and this is going to sound a little narcissistic, but I really thought I had built something great and that it could be even better. But I never really, it wasn't to me a way to get rich or to make money. So I never focused on the money side. I kept thinking about, how do I make this literally the number 1 stats application in the world? And that's all I focused on. The money, the exact numbers. I mean, I also vaguely had I wasn't going to sell it for $50,000, right? So there was a number in my head, but the real number didn't occur to me until literally until we got to brass tacks, right? And we signed all the NDAs. We started, they started reviewing my books, all the numbers, invoices, receipts, and they got really low level. And that's when they said, hey, we would, it was really a discussion between EBITDA and a multiple of revenue. That's what it came down to. So we started, and we discarded EBITDA pretty quick. I don't remember why. Probably because it was too complicated for me. Maybe, who knows? And a multiple of revenue is so easy. We just say, hey, it's it's 1x, 2x, 3x. Which one is it? And then we start, and then there's the negotiation, right? So we started from here, which was we're going to go with a multiple of revenue, top line, keep it nice and simple, very congenial. There's not going to be lawyers and accountants screwing it all up. It's going to be, one owner talking to another owner. And I had a partner at the time as well, a minority partner, and we were very, very close. We still are very, very close, and he's still my partner in one of my companies. So, but yeah, we just said, look, we're just a couple of people talking this through. Let's not overcomplicate this. And I really appreciated that approach because honestly, I had so little experience, very little.
Got it. Okay, so before they made an offer, did you, again, you didn't really have a sense of what you thought was fair as a multiple of revenue?
No, I didn't have a sense I knew it was going to be greater than 1 times revenue and it would be less than 10 times. Okay. I see the news. Like I see, what Uber was getting from VCs and what Facebook got from Andreessen. I don't want to paint this picture that I was a babe in the woods completely. I had never gone through an acquisition myself, but I keep on top of my industry. I've always been fascinated by the business of technology. Mm-hmm. So I had some ideas that we needed to be somewhere between, 1 times and 10 times. And really a 10 times multiplier, that wasn't going to be in the cards for me. Not at all. I wasn't running that kind of a business. This wasn't a business that had, a global, potential customer base, very niche. And I wanted to keep it that way. And I got that. To me, like I said, the focus was let's find a number, even if it's a number that I would not feel as happy with, but that would guarantee a future for my software, then I was about, this was not all about me getting an exit and retiring. I knew that no matter what I got, I wasn't gonna move to Hawaii on the money.
Yeah.
No matter what. So why fight,
So did they make the first move or did they ask you, what do you want for it?
They asked first. Absolutely.
And what did you say?
I prevaricated completely.
What does prevaricated mean?
Oh, I waffled. I was, I don't know, blah, 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 blah. I had no idea what to say. And I knew the question was coming. And my partner at the time and we had talked about it. And I was just, I don't know. I just couldn't say. I was embarrassed.
Well, it probably was a wise move in the sense that, he who starts first always loses in negotiation, or at least, there's a philosophy around that. So what was their first offer in terms of multiple of revenue?
Well, they started right at the bottom, right? They started at 1x. Yeah, 1 time. They're like, what's the bare minimum we think we can get away with?
What was your reaction to that?
Actually, I was, even 1 times to me was actually not that bad. Like it was not a bad number. Again, because I was more focused on the software, but yeah, then we went up from there, of course. I don't want to say how far or anything like that because it was a private sale. So. Okay. No problem. So at what point did you guys, so when you're talking about 1 times or 10 times or like the ranges and so forth of revenue, were you talking about the entire business, all 27 employees and the professional services as well? Or was it really just the revenue associated with the product Leaguestat? Yeah, good question. No, this was an asset sale. So they made that clear at the outset. They were not interested in my empire, the whole footprint. They were hockey. It's what appealed to me. They said we're looking for the hockey business and of course the software to go with it. So sure. They wanted those customers. They wanted to add them to their family, their sort of suite of technology tools, which were already pretty impressive. And as a matter of fact, we already had some overlapping customers too, which was pretty cool, right?
So you're going in and you knew up front that this was a bit of a carve out, right? That they didn't want all of your business, including the professional services stuff. They wanted just Leaguestat, which was a portion of your business, but not all. And so when you're going back and forth on multiple of revenue, you're aware at this point that they're just looking at Leaguestat revenue. They're not going to give you a multiple revenue on the other stuff. You're aware of the Leaguestat kind of carve out conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, from day one. That was never a question. It wasn't even, there was some, I suppose for a little while in the conversations, there was some confusion. I don't know that that the other side, the people on the Hockey Tech side, I don't know that they realized how much other business I had. They certainly did once we, exchanged our spreadsheets, but that confusion was resolved very quickly.
And were you ever tempted to sell the whole business, including the professional services piece?
No, I wasn't. No. For one thing, I knew that the professional services would have very little value to anyone. My CPA buddy told me that early on. He said, you're this tiny little business. He said, if you're running 100 million a year, maybe, but it was small little business. The relationships were 100% with myself or my partner or one of the staff. So that kind of a business really doesn't have much value to an acquirer, or that part of the business didn't.
What was the structure of your deal around your personal involvement going forward? I mean, did you have to sign up for an earnout, or was it, how did they structure the payment once you'd agreed to it? Did you have to stick around in order to get the money?
Yeah, I did. And there was some chit chat about that too. I know I've heard, I've heard since then, I've been involved in other acquisitions since that one. And I know that there's a lot of ways to structure this, but what happened in this case was it was pretty clear. I wasn't just selling this for money. I was selling this because I was looking for a way to expand Leaguestat. So part of the deal was that I want to come along. I'm going to bring, all the technology staff needed to support this software, but I want to know that there's going to be an investment to take it to the next level. And honestly, that investment wasn't about me. It wasn't about my earnout or I'm going to get a bonus. I mean, hey, maybe I should have done all those things. In hindsight, I definitely should have, but I didn't. I had these blinders on it, and all I wanted was, look, I'll come with the software and I'll stick around long enough to make sure that it stays on its feet. But I also want to take this money, this investment, and, grow it. Like, I'm not selling this to get rid of it and cash in. I'm selling this to watch my baby get all grown up, that's what I wanted to do.
Yep, I get it. So you guys agreed to a deal, which helped me understand the structure. So you agreed to a multiple of revenue. We can't get exactly into the numbers, but it was somewhere between 1 and 10, probably not as far as 10, but
no
more than 1. And so that's cool. And then did they say, okay, we're going to pay you a portion of that now and a portion later if you hit a certain set of goals? Or was it, we'll pay you 100% now and we're going to put you on salary for 6 months or a year or 2 years? Like, how did they compensate you for sticking around, basically?
Yeah. So two pieces. One was that the sale itself wouldn't be final, nor would all the funds be transferred until I had met certain obligations within the contract. So we set up a contract that I was to come on board full time. I came on it. Can't remember what my initial title was, but I became CTO for Hockey Tech. It was pretty simple stuff. So like, we had the sale, we agreed on numbers. It was not going to really close for about I can't remember if it was 12 months, 18 months, something like that. And there were incentives for another couple of years after that, which is kind of made me feel good. Maybe that was part of the ploy. Again, I was not very savvy at the time, but it did make me feel good. It made me feel like I was wanted at this new company, that I wasn't going to be incentives. Yeah. There were, incentives in terms of, my equity, my stake. And it was really clear. And the new owner made it super clear. He said, I value you. I want you here. And I'm going to prove that in this contract. So, there was I couldn't be fired. It was, as long as I met the obligations, I had pretty much had a guaranteed job for several years. It was really, honestly, really a pleasant experience. I know not every sale is, but mine was.
You mentioned equity. Are you saying that some of the way Hockey Tech bought your business was by giving you equity in their business?
No, that was more of a bonus. It was sort of an after the fact, like a thank you. So the sale was the sale. It was pretty cut and dry. And then the contract for, my services sticking around, that was, there was like a small, just a small thing in there to say, hey, like I said, it was all about good faith.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned it wasn't a year until the deal kind of, or the money actually changed hands. Was the contract, it was literally just you showing up to work was the obligation, and you passing over the keys to the server and stuff like that. It wasn't that you had targets to hit in order to achieve the pay, the agreed to amount, or was it?
A little bit of both. It wasn't just me, showing up. There were, I was responsible for the customer base, so I'll just give you a crazy scenario because it never happened and it was not going to happen. But if after, let's say 3 months, if literally every single customer had walked, well, that wouldn't have been so good for the deal, right? So, there was a stipulation in there that, everything was very reasonable. It wasn't like I was forced or required to double revenues or anything at all like that. But there was certainly an expectation that I wasn't going to do all this and then sell out the customers or, swing a deal with a competitor behind the scenes, all that kind of crazy stuff. No, it was very above board, the kind of thing you'd expect in a contract like this. We're paying you X for this asset sale. A portion of that you're not going to get until you meet the terms of the contract. And the contract was super reasonable. There's a role here for you. We want you to fulfill your role as you would, as any employee would. There's, a bonus maybe thrown in. And of course, if things go to crap, there's also provision in there for, that if I were to do something awful, or, send away or steal away the entire customer base, things like that.
Yeah. I'm digging in here because, the pandemic has been such a curveball for so many businesses where, anyone running a company for 10 years would, very predictable, same every year, all good, customers are happy. And then all of a sudden you have a pandemic and literally some businesses go out of business, like literally overnight, right? Like restaurants in Toronto, didn't matter how loyal your customers were, how successful the business was, they were closed on April 1st, 2020, and there was nothing you could do about it. So I'm curious from a risk kind of management perspective, like when you signed up for that contract that said, I'm going to show up for work and I'm not going to take the customers away and start a competing business, et cetera. Right. Like what was the threshold? Like how many customers could you lose or how much revenue could you lose? Like if you had lost, I don't know, 20% of your revenue or 20% of your clients, would that have penalized the deal? Or was there sort of a threshold that you agreed to that said, like, we're good as long as you don't drop X percent?
There was, again, private sale, and I don't want to, I'm still very good friends with the owner. And so I don't want to give away any of his tactics or strategies or anything like that. But I will say, yeah, there was a number. There was a very specific number in there. And should the revenue, because remember, this wasn't, if it drops below this percentage, I don't remember what the penalty was, because honestly, it was very generous. There was no way it was going to happen. And frankly, the reverse happened. Revenues went up every year. So.
And did you participate in some of that extra revenue? Like, were you able to get those bonuses or whatever when you exceeded? Yeah.
Again, everything was great. Like, I don't want to say this was a fairy tale. It wasn't. But things kind of rolled out the way we all expected. The software did well. The synergy was really good between the various pieces of IT in this company. Were there bumps along the way? Tons. Lots of drama. We had some staff issues and, but mostly it was all good. It was really good. And it did. Like we had a wonderful trajectory. It grew rapidly. And we had really good feedback from our clients. And that was, again, on the personal side. I wanted my software to do well, but I built personal relationships. These are customers that had some of them for 15 years.
Yeah.
And the last thing I wanted to do was screw them. And I didn't. Quite the opposite. They were very happy.
This deal closed in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we've got 4 years of water under the bridge. My question is,
well, actually,
go ahead.
2014 or 15 was when we pulled the trigger, but yeah.
Okay.
But I left the company around 2017, 2018. So.
Okay. Got it. So the deal closed 6 or 7 years. It's irrelevant. My point is you've had some time to think about it.
I have.
and I guess my question is, look, here's the deal. I think a lot of people listening to this will identify really, really at an emotional level with your focus on the product, your focus on your customers, the fact that you weren't trying to maximize every dollar and you didn't go to some fancy business school to learn all these tips and tricks for how to sell business. Like, I think there's going to be a lot of your story that people are like, that's me. Like, I don't know anything about selling a business. I know everything there is to know about running my company, and I know all my clients, but I don't know anything about acquirers. Like, I think there are people listening to this who will listen to you and they'll be like, that's me. Right. And so my question for you is, if you could rewind the tape, God, I'm dating myself and even saying that. If you could rewind the tape 7 or 8 years and go through the sale of Leaguestat one more time, is there one thing you might do differently in the process that perhaps other people about to go through the process that are a lot like you maybe should be aware of?
Wow. That is interesting. So one thing, if I had to pick one thing, can I pick two? Would that be
Sure,
okay? Like,
go.
or one,
Two.
let's call 1.5. All right.
Yeah.
So I would probably have been, found someone, either my partner or a third party, to help with the negotiations, in terms of just everything. In the end, I want to be clear, it turned out great. It was a wonderful experience. There, no acrimony. But the reality is I was very inexperienced. My partner actually had a lot more business experience than I did, but even he had never gone through an asset sale before. And I think that had we had someone else guide us through the process, let's say, it would have been better. It would have been better for us in the end. I don't want to be too cryptic here. I mean, when I say better, I think that it would have been better all around, better for Hockey Tech, better for us. I think that, like, again, money aside, could we have negotiated a higher number? I don't know. That's, to relitigate that now, tough call. I could probably call them up and say, hey, how much money did I leave on the table? I've never asked. I don't probably want to know. But I think that because I didn't know a ton, maybe there were different ways to structure it, different things I could have done. And remember, because it was an asset sale, I still had another company. And I did find for a little while, probably the first 6 to 8 months, it was really hard. Like, I was working somewhere else. I left my old company, all the employees, all the staff that didn't come over with part of the sale with me were still there. They were still at the, working for the old company, doing their thing. And so I struggled a little bit with that. Like, I wanted to be fully dedicated to this new experience, but at the same time, I had a going business there, and I couldn't afford to let that go belly up, because it was a very significant asset, of my own. And my partner was running it, and that was awesome. And he ran it pretty much solo for 3 years. But again, that's something that I wish I had I don't know, maybe a mentor or someone, my partner I could have gone to say, no, this is the right thing to do. And I don't know too, it was a very weird sale too. Like, not a lot of people do this, what we did, sell just one piece of software, split the two partners in half, send one off with the software, and then the other one stays behind to do what? To keep running what was left over. It was tricky. It was tricky.
Yeah. You mentioned there were two things that you might do differently if you had to play the whole thing over again.
Yeah. So one was, the mentor negotiator. And then the second one that I would do differently is, it's again, 1.5, they're related. I would have found a better way to balance the two roles. I think I moved a little too far to one side. Like, I dove into Hockey Tech once I went over. I loved it. It was everything I thought it was going to be. It was so much fun. Right. Like, I was just loving it. They did invest. They met, never mind the letter of the contract. Contract was not, in the end, they never looked at the contract again. Like, it was full steam ahead. I was having a blast. But I think I did a bit of a disservice to my personal future by, leaving my partner. I don't want to say I left him alone. I didn't. I mean, we had weekly calls. I was always checking in. I had, monthly, I still had to look at the books, et cetera. But I think that the second piece of that was that I should have maybe set things up a little bit differently.
And given yourself a little bit more time.
Yeah, a little more time.
Other business.
Yeah.
Got it. It's I just really appreciate you sharing with such humility, because I think, again, as I said earlier, I think so many people are great at what they do, but don't have the opportunity to sell their companies. And there's lots to it, as you found out. If people wanted to reach out and get in touch, is there a place that they can learn more about you, or do you take LinkedIn requests, or what's the best way for folks to reach out if they wanted to say hi on social media?
You hit it, LinkedIn. I do take LinkedIn requests. I do a lot of consulting now, which I love. And I'm back to my old IT company. I do that as well. So my partner and I are back together. The marriage has survived. But no, LinkedIn is the best way to reach me. And I love chatting.
Fantastic. So we'll put your LinkedIn profile in the show notes at Built to Sell Radio, actually builttosell.com. And I really appreciate you telling your story. Thanks for having me. Thanks for joining me. I'll try that again.
Well, John, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
I did. This was a blast. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, man.
Have a good one.
Hey, if you like today's episode, you're going to love my new book, The Art of Selling Your Business. The book was inspired by the cohort of my guests over the years who have been able to negotiate an exit far better than the benchmark in their industry, sometimes 2 or 3 times more than I would have expected. I was curious to understand the tactics and strategies of these entrepreneurs and what they do differently from average performers. The result is a playbook for punching above your weight when it comes to selling your business. To learn more, go to builttosell.com/selling. where we put together a collection of gifts for listeners who order the book. Just go to builttosell.com/selling. Built to Sell Radio is produced by Haley Parkhill. Our audio and video engineer is Dennis Labataglia. If you like what you've just heard, subscribe to get a new episode delivered to your inbox each week. Just go to builttosell.com.
Thanks for listening to Built to Sell Radio with John Warrillow. For complete show notes with links to additional resources, visit builttosell.com/blog. John is the founder of the Value Builder System. To find out how to improve the value of your business by 71%, visit valuebuildersystem.com. John is also the author of Built to Sell, Creating a Business That Can Thrive Without You, and The Automatic Customer, Creating a Subscription Business in Any Industry. Connect with John at facebook.com/builttosell or on Twitter at John Warrillow, WARRILLOW. Thanks for listening.